One.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for another DC Spotlight, this time for the week of February 27th, 2024. I thought it was an okay week. I don't know that anything stood out as being an absolute stinker. There may be a few rants involved. I also don't think anything stood out as like, oh my God, that was so good. So I don't know, kind of an average week. It'll be interesting because I know a lot of times when we talk about the books, by the time we get into talking about them, Rocky's like, oh, it was a better week than I thought. I just have this sneaking suspicion that we're going to talk about these books, and at the end, I'm going to go, oh, it was a worse week than I thought. But I guess we'll see. What are your thoughts on the week overall, Rock?
Well, there was a couple that outright confused me, but I actually having because we due to technical difficulties on my end, we never got started reviewing last night, so I had some time to read some of them again. I feel a little bit better about them on reflection than I did yesterday, but we shall see. Because I agree with you, it's amazing how our views can change as you and I rant and rave to each other as we review them. So we'll see.
Yeah, one of the series that we've liked from the beginning is Penguin. So we have issue 7 from writer Tom King. Steven Subic is the artist. Marcelo Maiello on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. I'll talk about the art first. I'm not the biggest fan of Subic's art, right? So we saw him use mixed media when he did the Riddler Year One, and I thought it was okay. It certainly established a mood, and from what I know of the Riddler in the recent Batman movie, um, it felt like it was kind of suited, right? Like the tone kind of fit that character. Now we're just getting traditional comic art from him, and I really just don't care for his style. It's a little muddy at times. I'm one of those people. I really like when I can see a character's eyes. I think you can portray a lot of emotion and thus tension and impact visually with the way a character's eyes look. This guy, a lot of times, when it comes to the Penguin, he's like drawing his eyes like you would draw a bird's eyes. You know, it's like all black with like a little white speck, and I
Yeah.
get nothing from it. And the Penguin looks maybe more grotesque than I've ever seen him look. He looks like, do you remember that old Captain America villain from the late '80s, the Slug? That's what Penguin looks like. He looks like a slug. He looks like the Slug back then, or just like a slug. Like if you've seen a slug in your garden or whatever, or out on your uh, porch or whatever, that's what he looks like. He doesn't look like the Penguin. He just looks gross. Which I guess that's supposed to be part of why the Penguin is who he is or whatever. But even with the art style that we had previously, this just doesn't fit. He looks so different. Um, there's one scene where he gets upset at one of the bartenders that is working at the club, which again, you don't expect. The guy's a villain. You don't expect him to have any compassion, but this guy literally had the job that the Penguin used to have. The Penguin was like, "Oh, woe is me! I'm getting shit all the time," and then he shits on this guy, like kills him, like just bashes his head into the bar until he's dead. And you're just like, man, Penguin, you're a scumbag. Well, he's supposed to be a scumbag, but my point is, like, I think you could have so much more impact in the art. Like when there's a scene where or a panel where the Penguin has smashed this guy's head into the bar, and he's got his head kind of down on the side, and he's like looking. And again, you see those eyes, and you don't get it. You don't get anything from those. And again, maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what Subic's going for. This kind of emotionless, black-eyed look of a crow or something like that. Um, but I just wasn't, just not a fan of this art at all. But when it comes to the story, I think early on in this Penguin series, you were a little more enamored with it than I was. And I talked a lot about that having to do, at least I felt, with how I always saw the Penguin as more of a jokey sort of Batman villain, and I just wasn't buying in that they were trying to make him so much more formidable and dangerous and what have you. Not unlike what King and Mitch Gerrits did with the Riddler the Riddler one bad day, which we were just blown away by. But I don't know. Maybe it's Tom King beating me over the head with, hey, the Penguin is really a badass. That I'm starting to buy into it, and I'm starting to feel Like I'm really anticipating the next issue of this series to see where it goes. I still feel a little bit like, I guess I get hung up on the physicality of it, right? Like I've said the same thing about the Joker. If the Joker was a real person and Batman was a real person, Batman would wipe the floor with them in about 30 seconds, if not less time. I feel kind of the same way about the Penguin, short, dumpy guy. Like how, and I get it. You're intimidated by him in some sort of way, but that bartender, this is your like you're going to be fighting for your life. I think you could take him. I think just an average, healthy person without any disabilities or whatever could probably take the Penguin in a fight. He's not healthy. He's, this overweight, short guy. He just, I don't know. So I go back a little bit back and forth, but I do think it's a compelling story. I think it's growing on me. And I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. Is this 12 issues? Do we know? I thought it was 12 issues.
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're a little over halfway, and I'm just not sure where King's going to take us next. So yeah, again, the art, just not my cup of tea, but the story has been, I think, very, very solid. It's been very good throughout, and it's gotten better. For me, the story, the narrative has gotten better over time. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I'm really impressed by this. I continue to be more interested in the Penguin than I've ever been interested in the Penguin in the history of the character. This is elevating the Penguin up and giving him more gravitas than he's ever had before, and I believe in a very believable way. Because I don't think, and you touched upon it, because you basically said, I mean, the Penguin is kind of a joke. He's a fat, blobby, dumb, he's a short, fat, unattractive man. Well, where does his power lie? I think Tom King's done a very good job making the Penguin to be absolutely sociopathically horrifying. He's a horrifying person. And what the central conceit of this issue and what King scripts so well here is the fact that everything is a contrivance. The costume, his alleged obsession with penguins, although he does like eating seafood, his purported insanity, all of it is a facade. So, and it was initially all a facade because Penguin needed Batman to treat him like a villain, even though he was ostensibly just trying to help Batman out. And Batman knew that he was being played, but Batman was playing a game of chess with Penguin, saying he knew that the Penguin was doing wrong as well. But Batman was gambling, saying, well, I can take down there's bigger fish to fry, so to speak, than this wannabe bartender who wants to be a mobster, this Penguin guy. Batman clearly has been underestimating Penguin, and he even knows he is, but he's hoping that he isn't. It's an uncomfortable game of chess. And I know some people have maybe criticized this story and say, well, Batman wouldn't be this stupid, Batman wouldn't do this. And I say BS. Batman absolutely would. A Batman at the beginning of his career wanting to take out the mafia, having an uncomfortable alliance like this with the bartender of the local bar establishment, he absolutely would, at least in my interpretation of Batman. And even the way that Penguin plays the long game here, and everything, even the way that he is drawn, you mentioned it, by Steven Subek, I actually like his look. I think it looks particularly terrifying, but I'll grant you that it's an adjustment if you're more of a fan of the traditional sort of look of the Penguin, of Oswald Cobblepot, no question about it. But I thought it was very well done. And even at the end, how he's figuring out, Penguin is always possibly one step ahead of Batman, even trying to figure out who bought the Mobster's Lounge that will eventually become the Iceberg Lounge. And of course, he discovers it's Bruce Wayne, and he's working in conjunction with the Help. It's just so well done, so many moving pieces, and I think this reads so well. I can't wait. This is going to be another Tom King 12 issues that I'll be picking up the hardcover for, by the looks of things, because I'm already loving this. And each issue, it seems to be going somewhere, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it, and maybe a little bit more than you, but I'm confident that well, I'm hopeful King can nail the landing, but he does nail the landing in most of what he's written, in my opinion. But we shall see.
Yeah. Heroes in Crisis, maybe notwithstanding, and most
yeah, notwithstanding.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. I forgot to mention. I did want to the whole idea of him putting on the affectations with the umbrella and the dressing like a penguin in the top hat and even the cigarette holder, just to be able to, for people to buy into the fact that he's insane. So when Batman does have to bust him in order to keep up his reputation with the rest of the criminals in Gotham, he goes to Arkham Asylum. He goes to the revolving door of Arkham Asylum rather than Blackgate Penitentiary. Yeah, that was an inspired piece of storytelling from King there. Okay, up next we have Power Girl number 6, Journey to Ferembia, written by Leah Williams. Art is by Marguerite Sauvage. Letters by Becca Carey. This was okay. What I didn't expect, what I really enjoyed, was the fact that we got a nearly silent issue last issue, and this actually ties into that. It makes what Streaky was doing and going and rescuing the other pets from this lab they were being experimented on. It makes it make sense. It ties it in. It doesn't make that just kind of a standalone issue. I also really enjoyed the art from Marguerite Sauvage. We've talked in the past about how her art has felt very static at times. She draws a beautiful Supergirl and a beautiful Power Girl here, especially when they're wearing like tank tops and what have you, and there's these, undercover as college co-eds, and they're not wearing their costumes. They look very beautiful. They look very young and bright and vibrant. So I appreciated that. This whole idea of there being some sort of new designer drug that is transporting citizens of Metropolis to some other dimension, it felt a little forced to me. Again, even though it tied in with what Streaky did last issue, and I appreciated that. This narrative just didn't really feel like it was as fleshed out as it could be. And I, nothing against Leigh Williams. I'm a fan of her writing. Maybe we just haven't gotten there yet. Maybe I just need to have a little more patience. But as much as I love the Marguerite Sauvage art, I do also wonder, is she the right, like when you think of, classic stories, especially DC comic stories that involve drug use, I wouldn't talk about or even ever imagine putting it with Marguerite Sauvage's art, which her art has this kind of innocence to it. It's bright and colored, right?
Yeah.
You think of things like the speedy, the grittiness of Neil Adams' art, Denny O'Neil writing it, or if you go on the other side of the street, that famous 2 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, I think it was 115, 116, somewhere in there, somewhere in the 110s, where Harry Osborn was taking drugs, written by Jerry Conway. I think Ross Andrew was the artist. Again, very gritty, very visceral art. And here we have a designer drug, and it's Marguerite Sauvage. It felt a little, I don't know, it just felt a little weird to me. It felt a little awkward. But maybe it'll again make more sense once it's fleshed out, because this world of Frembia is very bright and almost like fairy tale like, and maybe this new villain will, she does seem a little bit like Maleficent like, the villain from Disney villain from Sleeping Beauty. So it might all tie in, and at the end I'll think, this was the right choice. But right now it feels a little wonky as a choice for an artist. But I will say you were flashing through some of the covers there as well. Some fantastic covers. There's a great Dan Panosian cover. Yeah, that one there. That's just beautiful. So even though it looks like Gary Frank's not doing any more covers for Power Girl, we're still getting our fair share of wonderful Power Girl covers. So anyway, what were your thoughts on this issue, Rocky?
Well, a couple of nitpicks there. First of all, the artistic style, I got to agree. I don't like when it does feel a little bit like Barbie to me, like watching a bunch of Barbie dolls interact because of the style of the art. And I get it. It's stylistic, and that's just the way it is. But it goes back and forth between Marguerite Sauvage's art and well, actually, I guess it's she's the only artist, but sometimes it has a little bit of a manga or anime feel to it, and I'm not really a fan of that. It doesn't quite work well for me, but it is what it is. This whole idea of a drug, this Avalon drug, which is basically it's non-addictive, non-habit forming, but kids, these students at the university keep going missing, and they end up being lost in this Ferembia place, and this Madam of Vice is sort of ruling this other place where if you take this drug, you get sort of you get sort of transported there. It ends up that apparently both Supergirl and Power Girl lose their powers once they're there. A couple of nitpicks here, and I'm just an observation. I thought it was a little disturbing that Omen decided to manipulate the minds of the college students to try to prevent them from taking drugs. That's you're encroaching on that's not mind raping, but well, maybe it is. It's a little bit uncomfortable that she did that, and not enough pushback, I think, from Power Girl and Supergirl. Also, and this is maybe a bigger nitpick, what on earth? Why is there a scene with Supergirl and Power Girl having to use a microscope to look? I mean, they have microscopic vision. Why is there a scene that they're taking turns looking through a microscope? That is ridiculous. That is completely unnecessary. They don't have to do that. It doesn't make any sense. I'm pretty sure that, Kryptonians don't have to do that. Even Power Girl from a different Krypton. So I thought that was really a scene that they should know better. There's a lot of talking heads in this issue, a lot of dialogue, which it could have probably moved a little bit faster, but I get it. You got to give them something to do while they're having these conversations, but that was a misstep. I think that was a misstep. They can be Supergirl could be 100 miles away and tell you how many cells, a cat has, for God's sakes. But it is what it is. Having said that, I will say that just a quick note. Some people were bitching last issue because they were upset that last issue was a Streaky the cat issue for the whole issue. That's actually tied in with this issue. It actually did have some narrative purpose other than it wasn't just a wasted issue showing us Streaky. I mean, the lab that she rescued the cats from were actually animals that were being experimented upon with this Avalon drug, which is being used here. So I thought that was a nice sort of callback to the previous issue, which frankly I didn't expect. So that was all in all, I didn't mind this issue other than those nitpicks.
Yeah, and again, don't have hard sales numbers on these titles, but just in comparison, Power Girl is one of the lower selling titles. But then again, the Penguin is one of their lower selling titles too, which I just don't. It's so good. So yeah, kind of wonder where things stand. So anyway, I might as well let that lead me into Amazon's Attack, because that's one of their best selling titles, which I guess the power of Wonder Woman, maybe the word of mouth with how great Tom King and Daniel Samper's Wonder Woman run has been so far. And make sure you watch all the way to the end, because I have some news about that series coming up later this week. But anyway, Amazon Attack Part 5, Josie Campbell, the writer, Vasco Gregiv, artist, Alex Guermas, colors, Becca Carey on letters. I was surprised to see this up toward the top of the list when it came to, what DC books are selling more than others. This leans heavily into things that we got in the Trial of Amazon. So does the Artemis story that we're going to talk about later in Batman Brave and the Bold. And also almost like a bridge between what we saw with Trial of the Amazons and what we're seeing in the Wonder Woman title right now. But maybe this leans a little more into the Trial of the Amazons, because when the sort of the evil villain, the antagonist that stands revealed here, you're sort of not surprised. If you've been reading along, I won't say suffering while reading along. It's not been to that point, but there have been times where it's been a bit of a chore to keep up with what's been going on with the Amazons. Trial of the Amazons, just in the title and the way it was promoted. And Rocky and I both admitted at the time, maybe it was us reading into it. I mean, you hear Amazon, you hear Trial, you immediately think of some sort of physical challenge and competition or what have you. And that wasn't what it was at all. It ended up being, much more of a political book. But if you've been following along with everything that's been going on for the last 2 years and Themyscira, this will not come as a surprise when we get the villain that's to be revealed. I'll let Rocky get into the plot details of it. But I'm just going to say this. It's not that I think the story is bad and the direction they're taking it is bad. And I like the way Josie Campbell gives us the comparison and the differences, right? She mentions when Hippolyta was queen, how Themyscira was a sword, and it was the bulwark against man's world. Nubia, to her own admission, says, "I don't want it to be a sword. I want it to be hope." I mean, just as an Amazon, as a fan of the Amazons, I think that's the wrong. I think Nubia is just wrong. I think that's the wrong tack to take, because I don't think the world's ready for that. At least as it's been established in the DC universe currently, this socio-political climate or what have you. So you can see what's going on. You can kind of understand it, and you can agree or disagree with what's happening. Um, but the overall political aspect of it, I think, is interesting. The problem that I have with it, it's just taking too fucking long. It's just taking too long. Like all of this, a 6 issue series with all the Yara Flor stuff and all the other Trial of Amazon tie-in, whatever. I think all of it, 6 issues come out, bi-weekly, even if that's how you want it to be, and label it as an event, and just be done with it at this point. And if you wanted it to tie in with what Tom King was going to do, then have it come out, you know, concurrently with the first 6 issues of Tom King's Wonder Woman, or come out, 3 months before Tom King's Wonder Woman. It's just taken too long. It's dragged out so long. It makes the Amazons feel boring because it takes so long to get anywhere, to do anything. And that's the biggest problem that I have with it. I don't have a problem with the art. I think Vasco Gregev's art is fantastic. I like the characterization that Josie Campbell is giving these characters, even though I don't agree with Nubia's views and beliefs and stance. I understand why she has them with where she is as a character and where she's come from. Coming from the Well of Souls and being reincarnated from a woman that suffered in a previous life and all that. I can understand her wanting to be more hopeful and not wanting to be a realist, basically, and take a more kind of militant stance the way Hippolyta did. I completely understand all of it. And I think Josie Campbell does a good job, but it's just taking too long. And, we talked about it when Yara Flor first came out. You were much more interested in Yara Flor as a character than I was. I could pretty much leave her right from the start. But even that Yara Flor series that Joelle Jones did, like, again, it just dragged and nothing happened. And we got even you got bored with the character because nothing's been done. Nothing's been done with her. And I think that's the problem with the Amazons. And if we look at what's been happening in the Tom King Wonder Woman series, there could be an argument that maybe it's a little bit too decompressed at times. But overall, the series, we talked about it when we talked about the very first issue, how it was a truncated timeline. Like, it went from the event in Billings, Montana, to all of a sudden, all the Amazons are banned. They should need to be extradited, all that. Like, things were moving quickly. When you look at an individual issue, sometimes it doesn't cover a large period of time, but sometimes you get time jumps in an issue or time jumps between issues, and things at least feel like they're moving. Maybe not as fast as we would like, but certainly in that series, it's paced much quicker than the rest of the Amazonian titles have been for the last 2 years, I would argue. So, yeah, not surprised who the villain is. What the fallout is going to be has me curious. But if you want to keep any other Wonder Woman tangential series going, you need to pick up the pace, DC. You gotta pick up the pace. It's just taken too long to get where we are with the Amazons. And also, I like the idea of Nubia as a character. I was more interested in Nubia than Yara Flor when it felt like they were trying to put the spotlight on her. But I've kind of had enough. I sort of feel like part of the reason things move so slow is Nubia's sort of wishy-washy. She doesn't make decisions. She's always consulting other Amazons. What should I do? Blah, blah, blah. At least Hippolyta had some agency, Get Hippolyta out of the god realm, put her back on the throne, and let's just have a little bit quicker paced stories. Because I think that's really been the biggest downfall, is just the pacing. We could argue whether or not the stories were strong during the Clunrad run or what have you, and that's debatable. But regardless of who's been writing things lately, it's just been moving too damn slow. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, honestly, I've said a number of times in the past where the worst thing I can do as a reviewer, I think, is review the comic I want it to be as opposed to the comic that it actually is. And to be honest with you, I don't like the story here. I don't like the plotting. I don't like the plot itself. I don't like the apples of discord. I think it's grounded too much in mythology. I think that the inherent strengths of Tom King's run was that it actually it forces like humanity confronts the Amazons from a humanity's perspective and from the aspect of maybe bigotry and even misandry and misogyny and while it might be political, it is what it is. But it you know, to me, it sidesteps the issue when we drown this side story in mythology. And so we got Heracles here as the villain, or some unknown force and some asylum, some mystical place. I just don't care about that. I mean, what does that have to do? We have an entire world that's against the Amazons. Deal with that. And then even we get this at one point while we have Faruka who ends up being taken over. I'm not even sure if Faruka betrays the Amazons or if she's controlled. It looks like she's being controlled by Heracles, or who's the main bad guy here, or maybe Heracles is just an illusion. I don't really know, but it just seems like I don't. It just seems like it's just going to be grounded in mythology again, and none of it's going to have any consequence. It's not clear to me, other than, I mean, on the periphery, Peacemaker's in here, and of course, Josie Campbell does a good job here of scripting Peacemaker and all the Amazons, quite frankly. Josie Campbell is doing a good job with the story that she has created, that she's done. Okay, it's okay. It's just not compelling to me. And we're not really getting to know all the characters. And even Nubia, there's a scene here where, they're teleporting all over the place. They're being chased by the Peacemaker, and Hoppy the Rabbit, who is the sidekick to Mary Marvel, is teleporting them all over the place. And they get teleported from India to Santa Fe to the Garden of Hesperiti and to Tunisia, and they teleport all over the place. And then in the midst of this, they end up in, I think, someplace in India. A kid ends up shooting Nubia because he panics. And then it just sort of, it takes an odd turn. And then Nubia gets all frustrated and she cries out in anger. And you've said it before, and I know it's the intention of the story, but you've mentioned before how incompetent Nubia is as a queen. And while on one hand, she's definitely not a Mary Sue, Nubia. You can't say that about her. She definitely makes mistakes, and I appreciate those flaws in her character. But I wish there'd be some more acknowledgement on her part and consequence to those failures, other than always being propped up here, because it kind of frustrates me. Even when Faruka sort of betrays the Amazons, and she's talking about how the Banner McDowell are they hate man's world, and they're justifying, and they're. I've said before that I think that there's a lot of reason why the Amazons need to get better as a race. They really, truly do, that they have misandry. There's never an acknowledgement of the flaws of the Amazonian society, how they can change. Change begins with them. This inherent assumption that somehow humanity has to be the only one that changes. It's inherent in this story again and again. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I actually enjoy this story more than it is. I want to give Josie Campbell some credit because this is actually better than I thought it was. And I got to be maybe a little critical of Tom King, because I don't think his story, I mean, let me just say this. Look at all the villains that Wonder Woman fought in Wonder Woman #6. And we don't have a single one of those villains that any of the Wonder Girls here are confronting. Nubia, where's Grail in this one? Where's Cersei here? Where's the Angleman here? I mean, if this is a genuine crossover, where are those villains? Well, I know what the answer is. Tom King won't let them play in that sandbox because those villains have to be in Wonder Woman. I'm guessing. I apologize to Tom King if that's not the case, but I would have liked to have seen more of that. You got awesome characters to play with, and none of them. The most boring one, Heracles? Really? Apples of Discord? Really? Why not have the Sovereign make an appearance, or an underling of the Sovereign, or all that? And again, I'm sorry, I'm playing script doctor, and maybe Josie Campbell couldn't do that. But it just seems to me that it's a missed opportunity, and it's such an obvious one. And again, to me, it's a case of, not giving the fans what it's fairly obvious we would want if you know what the story is on Tom King, assuming that she even knew it in the first place. But in any event, not bad, I guess, given what she had to play with. But I wish I was expecting a little bit more. And I agree with you; it does seem to drag on a little bit, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is a crossover or a tie-in to the Tom King, Daniel Sampere Wonder Woman series, like in the most token fashion. Like, yes, they're mentioning the events, they're mentioning that Amazons are the enemy. That's sort of the initial starting point. But other than that, it's not really a crossover in any other way, shape, or form. Um, and so, and I do, I take your point. Those villains are much more interesting than Heracles or uh, a, a betrayer, a Faruka who is a betrayer. They're much more interesting than that. But at the same time, like I said, this feels like it's a little bit of a bridge between the two. Um, so, and those are technically Wonder Woman's rogues gallery, not Nubia's or Yara Flores or whatever. So I don't know. I'll certainly find out. I'll certainly bring that up. But
Yeah.
the other thing that I wanted to mention here is, as far as Faruka betraying, yes, maybe she's being influenced by an apple of discord. Maybe she's being influenced by Heracles, but I sort of feel it's one of those things, the old cliche, like when you're hypnotized, even though you're hypnotized, you still wouldn't do something that you're like morally object to. This
Yeah.
goes all the way back to, Nubia being acknowledged as the queen of all three tribes, and that never sat right with Faruka. She was very antagonistic that entire Trial of the Amazon event. So I sort of took this to be like she agreed at the time to kind of save face in front of all the other Amazons, but maybe was planning this all along,
Yeah.
or was looking for an opportunity to,
Yeah.
put one over on Nubia. So I don't know how much she's being controlled, or how much she's allowing herself to be controlled, or maybe she's just thrown in with Heracles. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we will.
Up next, we have J. Garrick the Flash, #5. The Doctor is in. This is from writer Jeremy Adams. Diego Orlatuga is the artist. Luis Guerrero on color. Steve Wands on letters. Very dynamic art as it's been throughout. Diego Orlatuga, it's like I see so many influences on his art. I can see some Scott Collins here. Maybe I haven't seen that previously, because it looks like a little bit more texture here. And the line work isn't quite as clean as it's been. And so for that reason, I'm also getting a little bit of uh, uh, Dijon Domenico as well.
Yeah.
So, uh, I mean, the art is still very solid. If I had any preference at all, I would like, I think Carmine Dijon Domenico, his line work is a little finer. His line weights aren't quite so heavy. I'd probably say the same thing for Scott Collins. But again, Orlatuga is gonna do what he does, and he 100% should have his own style. But when it comes to drawing books with speedsters, I've talked about this before. I think what you get with a finer line is more of a sense of movement. When you're using a real thick line for your line work, it really feels like it's down into the page, which doesn't promote movement, right? It promotes a feeling of being powerful and being sort of unmovable and very solid. So I do think it would work a little better if he was using a line weight that wasn't quite so thick. But again, just kind of nitpicking, because overall the art is very dynamic, and he has some very good storytelling instincts, especially when we're talking about a father who is really old enough to be the grandfather, if not the great grandfather of his child, because she was missing so long. And she's, just come back, and he's got the balance of her being a hero, and he's trying to protect her because she's been missing so long. Like, there's some real dramatic tension there when it comes to that. And we've seen it in the story a couple times when Jay has told Judy, hey, you need to hide out. You need to stay on the sidelines. You need to not, be involved. She's a Garrick. She's a Flash. She's going to get out there and, try to do her best. You can't sideline her. And so I do really appreciate that part of the story from Jeremy Adams. As far as the story itself, we talked about it last time, how it's tying into the origin of Star Labs and this Dr. Elemental. tied into things from the past, Golden Age and what have you. Really appreciate that. And I appreciate that Dr. Midnight, one of Jay Garrick's old Justice Society teammates, shows up here as well. So that was fantastic. And even though the best laid plans and Jay and Dr. Midnight go out and they're trying to fight off the Robo Gorilla, the forces of Dr. Elemental, he's one step ahead of them. Even though you would think nobody would be one step ahead of Jay Garrick, he's the Flash.
It's a bear. Elemental. It's a Robo Bear, not a gorilla.
Yeah, sorry, Robo Bear. Yeah, sorry, I have the jail ape on my mind with the event coming up from DC this summer. But anyway, yeah, Dr. Elemental sneaks in behind them, kidnaps Judy, and we'll see where it goes from there. But as we've come to expect from Jeremy Adams, very well paced, very fun issue, very brightly colored, and yeah, I don't really have anything negative to say. It does feel a little bit like a transitional issue. I mean, the big things that happen here are, well, there's really only one, and that's Dr. Elemental kidnapping Judy. The rest of it is just all sort of set up a little bit of the fallout from last issue, and then set up for the big climax of the story, I guess you'd say. But, again, you have to have these sort of issues that set things up and put things in place, even though it may feel a little bit down in terms of impact. That way you can have the high of however the story is going to wrap up. So we'll see. What are your thoughts on this one, Rock?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Frankly, from a plot perspective, not a lot happens, but this is where the artist, Diego Olategui, artist, I butchered his name, he hits where he shines. Leo Guerrero's coloring, it absolutely pops off the page. It's fantastic. I had a lot of fun reading this. A lot of fun just sort of paging through it. It's a lot of fun. The art's fantastic. The Jeremy Adams on the scripting, the dialogue is great. I love the relationship between the Boom, Judy Garrick, and her father, Jay Garrick. And also kudos to Jeremy Adams for Joel Cyclone, utilizing the name of the first Flash in Brazil. I actually Googled that because I thought Joel, when I first saw the word, when Dr. Midnight first appeared, I didn't realize that was Dr. Midnight. I thought maybe it was a new character. And because he says, he mentions Joel Cyclone, and I thought, is that a new character? No, that's Joel Cyclone is the name of the first Flash in Brazil, and it's got all kinds of Golden Age origins apparently, and that is of course Dr. Midnight. And so I like that. And just because I've been reading comic books a long time, I am always reminded of how bad my memory is. If I did know that at one time, I completely forgot. And I love callbacks like that. If I Google something and I realize, oh my God, that's a nice callback. Again, kudos to Jeremy Adams, did a great job. And I also like how Jeremy Adams, every time he gets his shipment of comic books, he always does a quick 15, 30-second video with his kids holding his iPhone. and he puts it on Twitter or on YouTube, just to show him he's like a kid in a candy store opening up his own comic books that he wrote. So it's just fantastic. So kudos to Jeremy for that. And I enjoyed this issue. And like I said, it is a setup issue, but it's great setup. And I don't mind a great setup issue, or it's sort of like Wonder Woman #6. Okay, you can say not much happened, but look at that gorgeous fight scene we got, that incredible action that we got by Daniel Sampere in Wonder Woman #6. Here, we got fantastic art, great action with the Flashes and Dr. Elemental along with Dr. Midnight. So it was pretty good stuff. So I enjoyed this issue. Jeremy Adams continues to do a great job, a pretty good creative team.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast to the book we're going to talk about next, which is The Flash, the book Jeremy Adams came off of, issue #6, The Gift. Written by Simon Spurrier, art by Mike Deodato Jr., colors by Trish Hill, letters by Hassan Otsman El-Hal. You remember how I was talking about those sales numbers? Yeah, this one's been steadily decreasing, and that happens to every book, right? Every book there's attrition. That's why so many times we get so many #1s, right? Get a sales bump of #1, nowhere near the bump you used to get, and then eventually it gets down to the point where they cancel and they come out with new #1, a little bit of a. And people just think of it as a jumping on point. But when you compare the numbers of what my understanding of what Flash is doing now versus what it was doing, yeah, it's night and day. It's apples and oranges. And if you pick up the book and have been trying to understand what's going on, you can, it makes sense. this story is nearly incomprehensible. What Simon Spurrier is doing, uh, and a lot of times it's word salad. Especially, it felt like word salad early on in the first couple issues. I don't get the feeling as much anymore that it's word salad, but I think it's only making sense to him. What's going on? Because first of all, he knows the ending of the story. He knows where it goes, and maybe by the time we get to the end, it'll make sense to the rest of us as well. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, no matter how many times you read the issues, you just end up scratching your head going, wait, what's going on? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you what's going on if you're completely confused. I can. It's actually very simple. There's something wrong with the Speed Force. Wait, what? That's not an original idea? No, it's not an original idea. We talked about it from the very beginning. From the very beginning, the first issue, we said, yeah, the premise of this is there's something wrong with the Speed Force. Uh, and you're going to dash all this supposed cosmic horror and gobbledygook scientific language and what have you on there to try to dress it up. But at the end of the day, something's wrong with the Speed Force. And lo and behold, to absolutely zero, I could not be less surprised by this revelation. Also not original at all. The cause of the something wrong with the Speed Force is Wally West himself. No, right? Shocked. Yes, Wally West himself, who in whatever way this time for this writer is actually the cause of the problem with the Speed Force. Wait, didn't we just have a movie with Ezra Miller where he was the cause? Didn't we have Flashpoint, a giant event years ago that led to the New 52? That time it was Barry Allen. But again, this is redundant. It's been done before, and if you try to dress it up with different art from Mike Deodato, which is, the style he's using, very complicated, very beautiful, very technically well done, very nice to look at. But I've talked about it before. When you have this overly complicated narrative with all this word salad, and then you have panels that are constantly breaking the gutters, and it just makes it feel even more busy and even more confusing. Like if I were to just flip through this and not read any of this dialogue at all and just enjoy it for the art, I'd be like, this is cool what he's doing. It's sort of dynamic, but it doesn't work for the story because the story's overly complicated and doesn't make sense. And you have art that's overly complicated for that type of story. He used this same sort of style in the in one of the latest Infinity events, where you had the I can't remember what they were called now. Marvel, they crossed over. It was like Doctor Strange and Captain America were like crossed over or whatever. But anyway, that was kind of a complicated story too, and I sort of felt the same way about this style. I think this style would work really well for like a crime noir or something like that, where it's a lot more simple, or maybe like an old school science fiction story like Adam Strange or Superman out in space, or even a Green Lantern cosmic story, where the narrative's a little bit more simple. But for here, it doesn't work because it's not simple. I mean, the art itself as a standalone is gorgeous, but I just don't think it works for this story. And again, I don't think the story is very original. I'm not enjoying it. There's so many extraneous words that there's no reason for it. And the last thing that I'll mention, and this is just a personal thing, and I've mentioned this many times on the show before, when you have things that are happening, dramatic tension or things going sideways, only because heroes are not forthcoming or characters are not forthcoming with each other, that drives me crazy. It's the laziest form of writing. And I've made this comparison before as well. It's like an episode of Three's Company. There's always a misunderstanding. Why? Because people don't talk to each other. Wally's got secrets from Linda. Linda's got secrets from Wally. Wally's got secrets from Barry. Barry's got, like, no. These are people that have known each other for years. They've saved the universe together. They've died and come back. I mean, go back and think about one of the most impactful moments in DC Comics in decades, I would argue, right? Barry and Wally, that moment when Wally's pulled back, when he's, again, something wrong with the Speed Force, right? That moment scripted by Jeff Johns, Rebirth. He pulls Wally out. People cried. People teared up. These men have been through that together. And you're going to tell me that they're going to be pissy with each other and keep secrets from each other? I don't buy it. It's lazy writing to bring dramatic tension, to give an excuse for why things are going sideways and not working. I don't like it at any point. I guess maybe it's just because that's the way I am in life. Like if something's wrong and I know why something's wrong, I tell the person, hey, this is wrong. I might need your help to fix it. What insight do you have? What opinion? Are you aware of any of this? They don't do that. Are you kidding me? And it leads to problems. Again, super lazy. I've never been. I can't remember ever being less disappointed in a Flash book. I think I said it before. I haven't been this down on the Flash since Barry was on trial and it was dragging out for years.
Yeah.
And this goes back to Flash Volume 1, like issue 325 to 350. I mean, that's pre-crisis, people. That's pre-crisis. In my opinion, this is the worst Flash series in 30, 40 years. I'm sorry. I don't mean, I don't think Fletcher is a bad writer. I don't think Mike Deodato is a bad artist. I love what Is Spurrier is doing on John Constantine. This is just the wrong character and the wrong story for these characters. It just isn't working. And the sales, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, depending on your point of view, are bearing that out. And I actually, to the point where I'd read this a couple times to make sure I understood it. And I'm like, yeah, I understand it. And it's something's wrong with the feed force. And Wally's the problem. Okay, here we go again. I went to Comic Book Roundup and I was looking at the scores. And yeah, just like the sales are trending down, the scores are for this are trending down pretty quickly. From that first issue, I think it's like got about a 9, a little above a 9 for the critic and right around 9 for the fans. And
Yeah.
the critic scores, average scores have dropped faster than the fan scores have dropped, but it's like low 7s now. And that's only through the first 5 issues because, you know, this issue barely came out. It hasn't had a chance to be up there yet. So yeah, this is just not a good Flash story. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you can put talented people together, and unfortunately, it's not working out. You know, you can get a bunch of great flavors, doesn't mean they're going to work together. You know, hey, here's some chocolate ice cream, here's some tomato soup, here's some chocolate candy. Separately, they're all great. Throw them in a blender and mix them up. Probably not so good. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, Rocky. Enlighten me. Tell me how great this comic is.
Well, no, you're not. I mean, I could offer you a drink of scotch, of your favorite scotch, on the rocks, or instead of that, I could offer you a complex chemical formula along with the complex chemical formula that makes up ice, and you wouldn't know what I'm talking about, and you'd probably wonder why I just didn't. Well, Rocky, why didn't you just ask me if I wanted my favorite scotch on the rocks? And I'd say, yeah, you're probably right. Well, I would say, well, I'm Is Spurrier. Okay, if there is, like you said, if there's an easy way of saying something, and then there is a pretentious, unnecessary way of saying something, and what makes this so out of place for the Flash is that Wally West is the last character that Wally West has always been a character that when he needs help, he asks for it. I mean, it's fairly obvious. And the one time he didn't ask for help was in Heroes in Crisis, one of the most reviled event Wally West stories in modern comics history. And that's just the way it is. But like you said, I mean, yeah, something's wrong with the Speed Force. But just to give you just to give people who aren't reading this, I mean, the stillness, the uncoiled, which are these bad interdimensional beings show up. These and the stillness, or the uncoiled, they are devourers of rotting time. So they're somehow Barry and Wally can look at the uncoiled, and then they just know that they're rotting time, whatever that means. The stillness shows up, and they offer Barry Allen a tapered D brain. What's a tapered D brain? We're never told. And the tapered D brain helps to cleanse the corruption of rotting time. What does that mean? I don't know. The visuals don't help because, in fairness and in defense of one of my favorite artists, Mike Deodato Jr., how the hell do you draw rotting time? I mean, I don't think he knows, and I mean, it's not his fault that he doesn't know how to draw it, and it's not my fault that I don't know how to see it. You know, Jay shows up, talks Well, he talks to his Uncle Barry, Dad, and he says, Dad, come to the school. All the kids at the school have become ghosts. And ghosts seem to be sort of from another dimension, sort of like leaking into our time period. The students are frozen in time, and these ghosts are bleeding in from a different dimension. The kids are terrified because time is bleeding. Linda then shows up, and then Wally decides to, because they're traveling at super speed, but Wally decides out of the blue to give Linda a Three Stooges mask. So I guess he's afraid somebody's going to recognize Linda. I guess while they're vibrating at super speed, and it just seems so odd to me. And then what's causing this time to bleed and people to freeze in time and all these ripples? We don't really know, but we're all of a sudden out of the blue at the end. Barry Allen is revealed to have been possessed by the Crown of Thorns. What's the Crown of Thorns? We don't know. But the Crown of Thorns, which is maybe Eobard Thorn, is claiming that they want to use Wally West as a conduit weapon to shoot him into the source of creation to spread a virus that freezes time called the Corona Contrarium. Okay. All right. So what is this entity called, the Crown of Thorns? I don't know. But we have this really odd-looking face with what looks to be a bunch of upside-down fronds forming a brain, surrounded by Mirror Master and Gorilla Grodd and two other, presumably, members of the Rogues Gallery of the Flash. I don't really know what's going on now. Could it be explained? Maybe. I will say this in defense of Is Spurrier, and it's a weak defense, but I was looking. There are aspects of this that are kind of cool. There are aspects when I get a tidbit of what the uncoiled are, with what the stillness does, or when I see the Pilgrim from last issue when he's talking with young Jay, talking about Jay's powers, and he's from the future, and he's sort of being a little bit mysterious in how he's talking. There are bits and pieces that whet my appetite, but then as a whole, I just lose interest in the whole because there's so many individual, superfluous, pretentious exposition that I just sort of like, I'm at a loss to know what the hell's going on. And unfortunately it's extremely frustrating. And I know it's going to happen. And you implied it. You implied what's going to happen. At the end, somebody is going to realize, one of the characters is going to realize that nobody knows what's going on. And they're going to finally tell the reader what happened. And then Is Spurrier, in his defense, when he gives interviews, he's gonna say, "Well, I don't know why nobody didn't know what was going on. I told you what was going on." That's what's gonna happen, because that's all writers must defend their work. And by the way, we sung Is Spurrier's praises when we reviewed Hell on Earth, Hellblazer. So but we call him like we see him on the Flash. So, but yeah, this was a miss for me.
Yeah, and I didn't mention the Eobard Thawne tie-in at the end, but I guess Is Spurrier was like, just in case I'm not being redundant enough with something on the speedboat, and it's being caused by Wally West, let me also bring in the most overused Flash villain of all time, Eobard Thawne, in all different iterations. Okay, there we go. Anyway, enough said about that. Let's move on to a book that I have been enjoying more than you, which is really such a unique thing to have with Harley Quinn. Typically, you're more of a fan of her than me, but I think we're going to be on the same page with this one. So, and there are some things to like. It's the end of this multiversal Harley story, at least it appears to be, written by Tini Howard. There are a ton of artists on here because she's bopping around through different parts of the multiverse. And so, like for example, when she's in the dark multiverse, it's drawn by Kelly Jones. She's in the regular world, Sweeney Boo. Logan Farber gives us sort of this black and white first page. We have Elena G. Banish doing some art, Stefano Raphael, Mindy Lee, Marguerite Sauvage. And then as far as colors go, we have Jose Villarrubia, Steve Wands, handles the letters for everything. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy right now because somebody opened the garage door. But anyway, after everything that's been going on, and it's been such a big deal that Harley Quinn has had these multiversal powers, and she's been pulling different things out of the multiverse here and there and everywhere. And and these brothers I want to understand. At least that's what we were told, and it was kind of a unique thing that Tinny Howard did, and I thought it was interesting. These brothers I, they're trying to see how they can fit in. That they don't fit in very well into the multiverse, and they're going to Harley and they're saying, you've managed to have all these different versions of yourself, and you've managed to be accepted, and we want to understand how you do that and what have you. Um, and she said, "Oh, okay, I'll give in to what you want. I'll let you examine me, but first." And this happened last issue. But first, let me go have a moment with Ivy. And so she does that, and then what happens in the story is she does basically surrender to the brothers I, and they send her to all these different multiverses, all these different versions of DC multiverse, to see how she interacts there, to see how she fits in. And I guess they're trying to understand how they can have her versatility of character to get a little bit meta. Um, but they're trying to sort of pigeonhole her. And that's kind of where they lose. And again, it makes sense from a storytelling standpoint. The brothers I are, it's a computer, right? It's going to think of everything in absolutes, ones and zeros, black and white, however you want to think about it. And Harley's human, and she's been a little more than insane at various times, and she's kind of zany and wacky, whatever. So you can't even necessarily predict her behavior based on any sort of logic. That's just who she is as a character. So she's going through, they're sending her through different parts of the multiverse, and they're trying to understand. And eventually she's just sort of gives up. And she says, you think you're projecting me through the multiverse, but you're not. I'm still here on Earth. You're just projecting these images into my brain, trying to glean this knowledge. And I'm sort of fighting against it to protect my students and to protect everybody else that's there in Gotham. That's where the brothers I have her at this big intersection or in front of this theater or wherever it is. And she basically gives up. She says, look, this isn't a secret. If you really want to know, just, delve in. There's no reason to try to fool me by bopping me around to these different, kind of holodecks, if you will, and trying to glean the knowledge. Just strap me down and take a look. And so that's what they do. And it comes across as this entire Tinny Howard run has been this multiversal story, and she allows him to strap her down, and they take a look and they go, oh, she just sort of accepts herself for who she is. Okay. And that's it. It's just over. Like, they just scan her. They say scans complete. She's not a danger to the multiverse. She's a gift because, everybody loves her. And, the brothers I find out that she she's a unique individual. It's not the solution. They can't replicate, whatever it is about her that allows her to be so malleable. Well, why would that be a shock, guys? You're robots. She's human, and she's maybe the most unpredictable human because she has these psychological issues or whatever. It just came across as so anticlimactic. I wouldn't say disappointed, but I was just like, huh, that why did I what I just, it was built up to be this huge thing, and I think in execution it just, and part of it was like, when you give me that revelation that nothing they find in Harley's replicable, she's not a danger to the multiverse or whatever, like, give me at least like a big splash page to say that. But it just looks like a regular page. It just looks like a regular page. And then the whole story, it ends a page later after Harley goes around to the multiversal Quark family, goes, hey, thanks for helping me. Everything's hunky dory now. Like, it was, the whole multiverse was in danger, right? You had the sort of, whatever that Harley, I can't remember what, Harley 2.0, Harley.exe villain. Like, it was such a danger, whatever, and it's just, it almost felt like, okay, I only have 3 pages left on my arc. I got to end this. So here we go. Let me just snap the fingers and it'll just be over. It turns out you can't replicate Harley. But the brothers I are cool with it. Story's over. What? Yeah, it was. Yeah, wasn't a fan of the way that it ended. And the backup, I guess I should give the credits for the backup. It's from Erica Henderson. She writes it, she draws it, and we've got letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau, and it's Harley like out in the woods confronting different versions of the Joker, including the Killing Joke version, the Jack Nicholson version, the Cesar Romero version. These backups where Harley's dreaming have, we've talked about them before. They're so unnecessary. I guess it's just a chance for people that wouldn't normally get a chance to work on Harley. So yeah, one of the more disappointing issues of Harley Quinn we've had in a while. Didn't care for this one at all, the way this wrapped up, especially because I've been the one that's been kind of, this has been interesting. Harley Quinn, tied into the multiverse. Where's this going to go? And it ended on the wimpiest of whimpers. Yeah, wasn't a fan. So, what do you think of it, Rocky?
Well, I didn't like it, but I haven't been enjoying it at all since Tini Howard started her run, period. In fact, I would suggest that the way Tini Howard wrote her early Catwoman issues when she started Catwoman, when Harley Quinn went on road trips with that road trip with Catwoman, that was more of a Harley Quinn adventure than a Catwoman one, in my view. This I wasn't a fan of, but I'll stand by your comments on it because I just want to give some, my 2 cents worth of advice as a Harley fan. I'm not a Harley fan. I haven't been for quite a while because of writing like this, and I'll tell you why. If you're going to write a Harley Quinn multiverse story, understand that those of us that aren't fans of certain iterations of Harley, that if you're going to do a multiversal, understand that if there are different versions of Harley Quinn in the multiverse, there's a whole pile of them that are evil and that are cold-blooded killers and that have zero redeeming qualities. So show that. But I get it. You want to be this whole thing is a parody. Everything's a joke. It's unfair for me to criticize. You can't criticize Harley because she's crazy and she's happy-go-lucky and everything. Everything about this, from the approach to the character, the way it was done with the story, everything, even a misunderstanding of Brother Eye, everything about it, it just absolutely rubbed me the wrong way. I just wasn't a fan of it, and it's finally over, and I'm not sure what the point was. And I guess the point was, and this was your frustration too, and I sympathize with you because you give me your sympathy sometimes when I feel so passionate about something, only to be maybe a little bit down at the end. Is that at the end of the day, this sort of abruptly ends, and then all of a sudden, all Harley had to do to resolve matters was just, fall asleep on an operating table and let Brother Eye dissect her brain a little bit. And yeah, I don't know what we learned about Harley here. What did Harley learn about herself? What is the reader supposed to learn about Harley? Is Harley a danger to the multiverse? Of course not. There's only one person who's a danger to the multiverse, and that's Darkseid. And maybe you can come up with a handful of others. But Harley Quinn, come on. And I realize it's a Harley Quinn comic and it's meant to be a joke and a parody. But then if you're not going to approach it with some degree of maturity and some verisimilitude, I don't know why you even bother, quite frankly. But I'm glad it's over. Next issue, it's going to be Harley Quinn's birthday. And we'll see what that turns out to be. But this could have been told in a single issue. It should have been told in a single issue. And for me, this was a miss. And that's my mini rant. But I'm glad you enjoyed it more than me.
Yeah, and again, the art here, seeing these different, multiversal locales, even though they're all in Harley's mind, it's well done. I mean,
that is true. The art's very well done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Kelly Jones fan either, but when you talk about somebody to draw the dark multiverse, yeah, who better than Kelly Jones? So yeah, the choices of which artist to match up with which part of the multiverse worked very well. All right, up next we have Batman Brave and the Bold. There's 5 stories, so we'll try to fly through them. There's Batman Mother's Day Part 1, Carl Kerschel, writer and artist, M. Sasiak on colors, Steve Wands on letters, Artemis, The Poison Within Part 1, Delilah S. Dawson, the writer, Serge Acuna and George Combatas are the artists, Matt Herms on colors, Dave Sharp on letters, Nameless, Matt Harding is the writer, Mike Henderson on art, Adam Gwazowski on colors, Troy Petrie on letters, Lois Lane, The Game Prologue, by Torrin Gronbeck, who, as far as I know, has only done Marvel work. I think this might be her first DC work. Done some Avengers stuff, a lot of Thor work. Tom Derenick is the artist on that one. Lee Luffridge on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. And finally, Batman the Cheeseburger, written by Dan Waters. Ricardo Lopez Ortiz is the artist. Troy Petrie on letters. So we'll kick it off with Mother's Day. It's a Batman Maps Maguchi story. I thought it was okay. I'm not as familiar with Gotham Academy and Maps Maguchi as Rocky is, so he may be a little more invested in it. I thought it was a solid story. I'm a big fan of Carl Kerschel, both as a writer and an artist. One of the things I liked is this does feel sort of timeless, and tying in with that is the Batman's wearing his old blue and gray costume, so I really liked that. So we'll see how it plays out. Man-Bat appears to be one of the supporting characters, but there's a younger character who's also apparently afflicted with a very similar condition to Man-Bat, who appears to be the antagonist of the story, who I'm not really familiar with. But again, the way they talk about him seems like maybe he was a Gotham Academy character as well. So if you're missing Gotham Academy, it was Carl Kerschel that was a big part of that, along with Becky Cloonan. So I definitely would recommend picking this up. What do you think of the first story, Rod?
Yeah, I thought it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was, Maps, Mazaguchi there, Maps, who fancies herself sort of a sidekick or Batman's Robin, but Batman just always refuses to acknowledge that she's a Robin. But Batman always will call on her whenever he needs some information about anything to do with Gotham Academy. He goes to Maps. She's sort of like the go-to student that helps out Batman. And Batman in this one, Bruce Wayne is dating a new woman, Isla, who is, I guess, one of the teachers there, and it's something's going on. Somebody maps, and it involves one of the students, Tristan, and it looks like you said there's this sort of Man-Bat character, so something's going on. We don't exactly know what, but it's linked to Gotham Academy. Maps is getting near the end of it. Bruce Wayne's investigating it. Unfortunately, Bruce Wayne, in an investigation, he invites this Isla character to a ball. He ends up having to betray her. So it's sort of like Bruce Wayne sort of using another woman to for his own purposes, for being Batman, only to end up having to, unfortunately, he ends up being caught in a precarious position with another woman, and she gets a little bit jealous. And I thought it was, really well done. And, be nice. It would be nice if this was in like a full 20-page comic, so maybe it could end. But I thought it was interesting. I'm curious to see where it leads. And Batman's relationship with Maps, I think this is something that's building organically, and because everyone's focused on when we think back about how Batman's relationships with Jason Todd developed, with Dick Grayson, with Damian, with Tim Drake, Batman is slowly developing a relationship, a Batman/Robin relationship with Maps, and that's pretty cool. And we should remember that the older version of Maps is in Birds of Prey, the future version of Maps who can time travel and and so that's interesting there that Maps has that origins as a potential learning the ropes as a young wannabe Robin at Gotham Academy. So it's pretty cool. So as a Maps fan, I enjoyed this first issue, this first story.
Yeah, next up we have the Artemis story, which is interesting. It's her kind of moping around. I can't believe that everybody thought that I killed Hippolyta, that I could murder her, and blah blah blah. Feeling really sorry for herself. So it definitely feels like it could lead to something more. But the ironic thing is at the end of the story, and she's out in the desert. We don't know why. I mean, last time we saw her, I think she was playing the role of a hobo hiding out in a train that was heading who knew where. But now she's out in the desert somewhere, and she's sleeping at night, goes to sleep, a little sleeping bag, and a snake crawls into her sleeping bag and bites her. And, she wakes up, obviously being bit, stands up, snake falls, and she yells out, "Poison," which is exactly how Hippolyta got killed. So did somebody send the snake? Does it tie into her, her role in killing Hippolyta? Again, by request, Hippolyta asked her to poison her. So yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, I'm a fan of Artemis, and it was another part of the Trial of the Amazon story that didn't make much sense and that we didn't like. So hopefully there's some redemption here for Artemis. I feel like as a character, she deserves it. The art style is interesting because it feels sort of animated, like these are cells from a cartoon in a lot of ways. And I like Serge Acuna's art. George Combatis is definitely more of a cartoony style. So I guess when you combine them together, this is kind of the style we're getting. It just feels a little, it feels a little flat to me. The art feels a little flat. But again, I'm happy that we're getting an Artemis story because she's a character that I think has a lot of potential, and sort of feel like that potential hasn't been used lately, especially with the way she was treated in Trial of the Amazon. So, what are your thoughts on this one, Rocky?
This is an absolute utter waste of paper. 12 pages and absolutely nothing happens. She's wondering. We already know about Artemis. We already know that she's been exonerated from the death of Hippolyta. She even mentions that. We know that, and she cries about it. Artemis isn't going to cry about that. Come on. So there's mischaracterization. I don't recognize this character. She's not cool. She's not fun. She is boring. It's 12 pages of her moping and groping and wandering through the desert, ending with her being bit by a snake, and that's it. Come on, man. In one page, we could have got a recap in one page that she's got a new leash. She's wandering the desert, and she's got some agency. She's got a mission. She's other than just moping around, and then ending with her sleeping randomly in some desert. Is she outside of Banner McDowell? Where like. This is such a waste of paper. Like nothing happens here, and it's this type of stuff that will drive people away from these types of anthologies. There, we need substance here, and I'm being critical here, but the writer Delilah S. Dawson, this isn't the first time we've had wasted pages. I mean, she's got to learn that if you don't have anything to say, then don't say nothing in 12 issues in 12 pages. If what do you want to say in 12 pages and ask yourself, can you say it in one? Because you could absolutely say what happened in this 12 pages on one page. You didn't need the full recap. We already knew this. All you needed to know is that Artemis, all you needed to say was that is a quick recap in over 2 or 3 panels. You could have recapped that since what she's been doing. She's just been wandering around. In fact, I'm pretty sure we got an Artemis. Artemis was last seen on a train, sort of escaping and taking off. And, when I think of how far Artemis has fallen, she used to be so cool with Red Hood, with Bizarro. She was awesome. She was kicking ass. She was potentially in love with Red Hood. And now we get her this sobbing, this pathetic, this weeping Amazon. I mean, this is shameful to my mind. Absolutely shameful. And what's there to look forward to here? She got bit by a snake this issue. Ooh, what is she going to be bitten again next issue? I mean, I hate to be so harsh, but come on, man. This is not DC level stuff. Well, you got 12 pages here. I expect more. I'm sorry to rant a little bit harsh, but that's how I felt about it. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in it for the potential of, yes, what comes next. Because you're right. There's not much that happens here. But you also have to remember that I'm sure DC editorial is approaching it as there are a lot of people that pick this up because it says Batman in the title that wouldn't go near a title that says Trial of the Amazons. So yeah, I get that they're trying to establish, Artemis's frame of mind. Although to your point,
yeah,
it kind of seemed a little, in a better frame of mind the last time we saw her, even though she was kind of out on her own. But I also agree that with what Dawson is giving us here, that she's out on her own, and there could be a feeling there. And I guess again, it's a little out of character for Artemis, but there could be a feeling there that, man, I can't believe all these women that I fought side by side with would believe that I was capable of murdering Hippolyta. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Up next, The Nameless. It's a one-shot story. This guy who is sort of a nameless henchman goes up against Duke Thomas, the Signal, which kind of, I do appreciate that it shows that Duke Thomas has no business trying to be a superhero. The guy's just not very capable because this random henchman uses a bunch of weapons and could have defeated the Signal, could have defeated Duke Thomas had he wanted to, but that was not his point. The point was he was a henchman and he was diagnosed with some terminal illness, and he decided he was going to fight against the Signal and show everybody, all the other nameless, because he broadcast this on the internet, that they're important too, like the forgotten people or what have you. They have some agency. They can be formidable. And then it ends with that whole cliche of comics sometimes, the end question mark. So I thought it was okay. My favorite thing about it is it showed that Duke Thomas has no business trying to be a superhero. I think that character is just ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, I love Scott Snyder, but that was a total misstep. And the fact that we see little of Duke Thomas is a good thing, and the less we see, the better. So, overall, not a bad story, but nothing memorable here. What do you think?
I agree, and I'm not a fan of the Signal. I think he's just a redundant character whose only distinguishing feature is the fact that he's black and he wears nonsensically wears an absurd yellow costume just to make sure, even worse than Batman wearing the yellow bat symbol on his chest. He's a target. I will say this about the Signal: instead of Red Hood the Hill series, it should be the Signal the Hill, or Signal on the Hill series. And it should be Signal replacing Jason Todd in that series, because that way we have a brand new, huge group of new DC characters that can be evolved and organically developed. And, I would rather see that, although I understand why they're having Jason, Red Hood, because Red Hood's a bigger name than the Signal. I just don't care. I'd rather have the Signal, give him his own place in Gotham, like on the Hill, instead of doing that with Red Hood. And put Red Hood with Artemis already. Come on, people. And while you're at it, put John Kent with Saturn Girl, and I'll be a happy camper. Okay. Carry on.
Yeah. All right. Up next, we have this Lois Lane story. Far and away my favorite story in the book. I feel like we don't get enough Lois Lane stories. She's such a great character. She's so smart and capable. And yeah, she's just my favorite. So she had this reporter that she had put on this assignment that was supposedly writing this sort of fluff piece, a slice of life piece on this this group that would get together and create puzzles for themselves and riddles and what have you on the internet, and some of them even live action.
Yeah, online treasure hunting sort of thing.
And yeah, again, riddles and what clues to find whatever. And then one of the guys was like, "Oh, you do it in real life," and people would go there and they find the location, and there's tents there and food and what. Another time, when the reporter actually found where it was a bunch of hot air balloons. I went for a hot air balloon ride. Well, this reporter has been killed, and Lois fears that it's because of something she found that's tied into this online treasure hunting Riddler community. Not the Riddler, but this community that creates puzzles and riddles for themselves. So how that's all going to play out, it says to be continued. So it says prologue. So does that mean we're getting a Lois Lane series? I don't know. I haven't heard anything.
I would love that.
Yeah. Or is this just going to continue in Batman Brave and the Bold? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, far and away my favorite, like I said, my favorite story in this issue, although the next one's pretty fun too. But also, I thought that the art by Tom Derenick was outstanding. Again, it's very slice of life. I'm not getting any like superhero stuff from Derenick, but he does a very good job. Reminded me a lot of the Triangle era of Superman, when we'd get those subplots that had to do with the Daily Planet staff. I kind of miss those sometimes. So what are your thoughts on this one?
I liked it. I really like the fact that it, we're learning more about other reporters of the Daily Planet. And we know that it's sort of the central conceit of Superman stories that it seems the only reporter that often is in danger is either Jimmy Olsen as the so-called photographer, or Lois Lane as the sort of stereotypical Pulitzer Prize winning reporter. But, Lois is at least an interim editor-in-chief of the Planet. And, it makes sense that other reporters put their lives in danger all the time. And this Anna is one of them. And Anna ends up getting killed. And Lois feels guilty. And she kind of probably should feel guilty, because she feels she minimized. Anna even expressed her concerns about her own life to Lois. But Lois, who's accustomed to having her life threatened and being in those types of situations, just, basically told her to suck it up, more or less. And of course, when Anna now has been killed, Lois is taking it, feels personally responsible. And in Anna's investigations of this sort of like this online sort of like riddling and treasure hunting and this online game, it appears that apparently a congressman's affair was accidentally revealed, because the treasure hunt led many people to this hotel, and and accidentally this congressman's affair was revealed by accident, and one wonders if maybe the congressman, out of revenge, is playing a role in maybe Anna's death. We don't know, but it's interesting. I mean, this is just the first chapter, but I'm sort of I'm invested in the story. I want to know how Anna died. The art, as you said, the art's pretty damn good. I'm interested in this, and I would love an investigative story. Because we get a detective noir story. Give me something written by Ed Brubaker, Greg Rucka, another Greg Rucka penned Lois Lane story. Greg Rucka wrote a 12-issue Lois Lane story back in the day. Just I think 4 or 5 years ago, but that was unfortunately during the Bendis era, which unfortunately with the nonsense that Lois's story had to be embroiled in from Bendis, I would like to have that forgotten about and just have Rucka come back and just focus on just a different kind of story than the one he had to write at that time. But in any event, I didn't mind it, and I'm looking forward to the second chapter.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the Lois Lane story. You're right. It wasn't that it was bad, the one that Rucka wrote. It just wasn't what I wanted because it was that era. And as far as Lois being a little, putting herself in danger, not as seemingly being more brave, not as worried as somebody like Anna, Lois has the advantage of her husband always listening to her heartbeat.
That's right. How much
bravery is there? I'm teasing.
That's true.
I love her as a character, but you do think Anna doesn't have some superhero listening for her heartbeat.
Yeah.
Anyway, the last story, as I mentioned, a lot of fun from Dan Waters, Ortiz on the art. I'm not the biggest fan of Ortiz's style on art. It is a black and white story. You can see the heavy manga influence, but it is a fun story. It starts off with Batman counting every calorie, every amino acid, every little tiny thing down to the gram that goes into his body as he's preparing to go out, and his body temple got to be a machine and grab, destroy everybody, whatever. And he gets called to this disturbance that's happening at this fast food restaurant, and it's Clayface. Clayface has lost it. And basically what happened is Clayface went in there. He wanted a burger. He's like, every once in a while, you just want to eat something. So Clayface, his body's made out of clay now, right? So if he wants to actually eat something, he's got to concentrate on creating himself a tongue, and then the taste buds on that tongue, and his entire digestive system and his stomach, and like he's got to do it all. He's got to do it all, and think about that and concentrate on it. And he does all that, and he eats the burger, and it just doesn't taste very good to him, and he just loses it. He's just mad because he probably did something wrong. He didn't create his taste buds right, or whatever. He's upset that something most people take for granted, the fact that they can taste food, he doesn't get to experience. And so at the end of the story, Batman decides, and again, he's counting every gram, every, whatever that's not good for him, the sugary bun and all the condiments, whatever. He's counting all that and how bad it's going to be for him. But it's one of these fast food cheeseburgers. He's like, yeah, but it tastes good. And like, who of us doesn't, right? Like, I mean,
that's exactly right.
You go to, whatever fast food place you go to, Burger King or McDonald's or, In-N-Out or Five Guys, whatever it is, it's processed food, and it's, sugary this and extra carbs and whatever. And it's not healthy for you, but damn, doesn't it taste good? So I appreciated that. That was a fun story. Anything to add to that, Rocky?
Yeah, well, just a personal story for myself over the last. I'm on my second year now of just basically working out at least 4 or 5 times a week, and so far it's going pretty good, I have to say. And my diet, I literally eat like that during the week. I eat fairly healthy during the week, but on Saturdays and Sundays, it's like, look out. I mean, I got no problem cheating, and because that's just that's my prerogative, and I absolutely thoroughly enjoy it. And that last panel with Batman biting into that burger, it's like, hey man, go for it. It's still there's enough beef in there that I could justify that in a carnivore diet. So that's pretty good. So you got a couple of potatoes, you got a couple of tomatoes and some lettuce in there and some onions, and that's all right. That's minor cheating. You got to have some fun. I mean, if you're Batman, you got to take your joys as you find them.
Yeah, that's 100% true. If you're Batman, you take your joys where you find them. All right, up next we have Green Arrow #9, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Sean Isaacs, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Troy Petrie. I get what Williamson was going for here, the whole idea of Green Arrow, doing a halo drop, high altitude, low deployment for him to break into the Hall of what used to be the Hall of Justice. What are they calling it now? The Hall of Order or whatever. Now that Amanda Waller's in charge of it, and I get him, breaking in or whatever. But she catches him. She's aware that he's going to be there, what have you. And there's some back and forth, and basically she's saying, "Yeah, come and work for me. You don't have superpowers. It's really the people that have superpowers that I'm after." And I just, again, I don't know why anybody at this point would believe a word she says. And I don't know why Oliver Queen just doesn't say, "You know what, fuck you. You're a lying piece of shit. I don't believe anything you say." Whereas that, I mean, why is there any tension? Why is there any sort of back and forth? What's he going to do? Will he, get what she wants? I just don't get it. It's not a secret anymore. I don't know why people still pretend like she's not an out and out villain. But I'm sure he's going to go along with the plan for his own reasons. Maybe he thinks he can double cross her, whatever. Triple cross, quadruple cross. I don't even know anymore at this point, but she wants him to go and steal the data from Sanctuary. I mentioned Heroes in Crisis. We mentioned a couple times on this podcast, actually, which probably hadn't mentioned in a long time. So kind of funny that it's come up so many times because there is an actual in-story reference to Sanctuary this week. So, we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. But
Aren't you experiencing post-traumatic stress? The minute I heard Sanctuary, I just started to go into convulsions. I'm thinking like, no. But anyway.
I didn't hate that story the way a lot of people did. Was it the best thing that Tom ever did? No, by all means. And he even admitted that. He was like, yeah, if I would have stopped to think about it, I would have. And if he could go back and do it over again, he would choose somebody other than Wally West. But I get what he was trying to do. I don't think he was successful, obviously, and there were other issues with it beyond that, right? We talked about Harley Quinn taking out the Trinity, which was just ridiculous. But let's not relive that. Let's talk about the failures of this Green Arrow issue, not the failures of Sanctuary. I'm just not buying it anymore. It's so hard for me to read these stories with Amanda Waller and like, and I get it, right? There's the whole code of being a hero and don't kill whatever. But how does Oliver Queen not just like put an arrow in her head? You know what I mean? Like, I would argue that she is the biggest force for bad things happening in the DC universe. I won't go so far as to say the biggest force of evil, because I don't think she's inherently evil, because she's just deluded. She believes what she's doing is right. She's not doing it, because she wants to have the power or she wants to rule the world or whatever. She truly believes the world will be safer without all these metahumans. And in reality, in our world, that might actually be true, but not in the DC universe. The DC universe needs people with powers to save them from Necrostars and Darkseid invasions and that sort of thing. And Godzillas and King Kongs and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm just not buying it anymore. I'm so ready to have this absolute power series happen and just get rid of Amanda. Give me 6 months. Can we just start with a 6 month break? Like, I'll even, at this point, I probably even like 1 month. Can I get 1 month? Because she's in every goddamn book and I'm just so sick of her. I really am. So anyway, anything to add?
Well, Amanda Waller she's this contrived plot device on a perfect excuse for bad writing. It's like, I'm a writer. I don't know what to do, but I need a character that just shows up and knows everything for no apparent reason whatsoever. Amanda Waller. Well, yeah, and how does she know we do? It's sort of like if I wrote a comic book and I script that Superman flies, nobody would be surprised that Superman's flying. He's Superman. Well, you throw Amanda Waller in a scene. Amanda Waller just knows. Why? She knows everything. Why? She's Amanda Waller. It's just too convenient, and maybe it's because she's human. She's not a metahuman, but it just seems too contrived here. Now, at least I'll say this about Williamson. It still fails this issue. Number one, it never occurs to Oliver Queen to ask himself, hey, wait a minute. I owned the Hall of Justice. How did Amanda Waller get it from me? He never asks himself that question. I mean, he owned it. He was the owner. I think Williamson forgot that. I mean, it would think now, maybe did Oliver Queen die and then in the 7 days that he was dead, it was sold to the government. The government just doesn't, I'm sorry, but the government just confiscates the Hall of Justice, and Batman doesn't seem to mind. Batman just says, "Oh, okay, so no, I guess that's it." The Justice League, Titans. Oh, I guess there's an Oblivion bar. There's a magical Oblivion bar in the basement of the Hall of Justice. What's going to happen with that? I mean, and then the hypocrisy of Amanda Waller talking about weapons of mass destructions in the Hall of Justice. Well, wait a minute. It was under very powerful guard. How are you overcoming the security of the Hall of Justice? I'm sorry, but again, there's to Williamson's credit, he does his best to come up with comic book science to how Amanda Waller and Peacemaker and all those guys get all these weapons and access in the Hall of Justice. But I just thought, again, just sheer convenience, contrivance, and I just didn't really buy it. Also, how did Amanda Waller get away from Earth 3? Well, we got further confirmation in this issue that Amanda Waller this is in fact the Amanda Waller that was from Earth 3. She says that Amanda says that a benefactor brought me home from Earth 3 and gave me a new mission. Now, we know from solicits that benefactor is likely Brainiac. But let's just back up for a second. What we know of Earth 3. Amanda Waller loved being on Earth 3. Why? Because she was in complete, total, dominating control of Earth 3. She had an arrangement with Ultraman. She basically said to Ultraman, you're kind of an idiot. Let me do all the hard stuff, all the thinking. You can just sit back and be Ultraman and be the asshole you are, and I'll run things. And Ultraman had no problem with that. Why would Amanda Waller want to leave a situation like that where she could literally have her everyday geekasm and control-gasms, all she wants every day, plus twice on Tuesday, on Earth 3? What would Brainiac offer her to come back to her home for what? To take over all the metahumans, to steal all the power? I need more than that. That's not good enough. I don't buy it. Where's the evil? Where's this sudden turn for evil? I don't get it. And what I'm so disappointed about DC about is that we've got this relentless, very one-dimensional portrayal of we've had virtually zero evolution of character for Amanda Waller over the last 2 years. She's the same old bitch, the same old control freak, showing up. She should have been in Earth 3, but she wasn't. So she's just come back and she's doing the same old things again and again, secret after secret after secret. No development, no nothing. You interviewed Nicole Maines. Great interview, by the way, Jace. I listened to it. You interviewed, and she made it. She hinted that at least on her 4-issue series Dream Team, Amanda Waller's going to be in it, Suicide Squad, and there might be some character development there that Nicole Maines said she will develop, and I hope she does, because I really need an explanation. How does Amanda Waller go from just being a control freak to full bore evil? I'm really curious, because so far we haven't really got any of that, and it's very disappointing. And we didn't get much here. And as far as Sanctuary at the end, I don't care. I mean, honest to God, if I would have asked you, Jace, a serious question, if I'd have asked you before we read this issue, if I'd have asked you, do you think Amanda Waller has all the secrets of Sanctuary already? You would have probably guessed.
Yeah,
yes.
She does.
Of course.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like you said, she knows everything.
She knows everything.
That's her superpower. Why would she not already have that?
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think, just to play devil's advocate to why would she leave Earth 3? Well, maybe she got bored. She had complete control of Earth 3. Now, maybe, like you said, Brainiac maybe with the help of Brainiac, she thinks she can do the same thing to this Earth. So
Yeah.
that's
And Ultraman was killed. Ultraman was killed, so maybe it's not fun anymore, right? But
yeah.
anyway, but yeah.
But yeah,
So
we'll talk about the absolute power event at the end, everybody. So if you don't know what we're talking about, but let's go ahead and finish up here with Detective Comics number 1082, written by Ram V, Riccardo Federici, and Stefano Raphael. Handle the art duties. Colors by Lee Luffridge, Ariana Mayer on the letters, and then there is a backup story that, excuse me, it's the second part of the backup about Dr. Hurt. It's written by Dan Waters. Christopher Mitten is the artist. Triona Farrell on colors. Steve Wands on letters. Man, I run so hot and cold on these Detective Comic stories. Wasn't liking it at first, then it got good. Now it feels like it's dragging for me again. I will say, we have these two different artists. We have Riccardo Federici on the Batman story, and then we have Stefano Raphael on the Question story. I'm actually enjoying the Question story. I'm enjoying the agency that Renee Montoya has as the Question a lot, but I enjoy the art from Riccardo Federici with this Batman lost in the proverbial desert of his mind, I guess, maybe, or maybe it's a real desert. It's not quite clear. With this whole Dr. Hurt story, and he's trying to get to Talia and what have you. But the narrative on that one is just dragging. It's dragging, but the art's gorgeous. The narrative on the other one, fast paced, a lot happening, a lot of impactful moments, but I don't enjoy the art as much. So, and it doesn't balance out. It's not just, okay, well, I get good art on this one, great story on this one, or great art on one, great story on this one. So yeah, I'm ready to move to the final phase. I mean, part of what you and I were both talking about when we were enjoying Detective Comics not so long ago, not to say you're not, maybe you're still enjoying it, but we felt like we were building to the end finally for Ram V.
yeah.
And now it feels like we're at, okay, here we are in the upteenth intermission where he's been taken out of Gotham and he's trying to fight through whatever this Dr. Hurt guy's got for him and trying to fight off the Asmir. And maybe he's fought off the Asmir already. Maybe he hasn't. What about Barbados? Like, can we just get there already? Can we just get there? It's just taking too long. I'm struggling. I'm struggling to keep my interest. But I did go back after I read it. I just went back and didn't read it and just looked through the art. I was, oh man, so gorgeous. The art's so gorgeous. And then as far as the backup, it's okay. I didn't think this part two was as well done as part one. Felt like a little bit tropey. But it may, by the time it's done, the backup, give more context to Dr. Hurt, which in turn will maybe influence or add some context to the Dr. Hurt story and Dr. Hurt character in the main story. So it may improve the main story for me retroactively, which is kind of weird to think about. But anyway, what are your thoughts on these two?
Well, I agree with you that I think Ram V. I've been hit and miss on this too, mostly hit, but this feels like we know we're leading toward, this is sort of ultimately the final chapter. We're in the last, whatever, I think the final issue of this will be in August. And so we're at the end game here of this grand epic by Ram V. But this does seem a little bit, I feel, like almost plotting at this point. Batman is hallucinating. Remember, Talia, I mean, Batman was hung by the Organs in Gotham City, and he's healing, and Talia took him to the desert, let him wander in the desert where she knows he has to go on his own internal journey, where he's hallucinating, talking to Dr. Hurt, and Dr. Hurt is himself sort of the embodiment of the devil, and Batman, it's mentioned here, which is curious, because I didn't really know, Batman has apparently already defeated the Asmir, which was the sort of the psychological infection of the Organs. He's defeated the Asmir, but now I think he's battling Barbados while Dr. Hurt is talking to him. And Batman, I guess, overcomes Barbados, I think, at the end. And then at the end of the main story, Batman is sort of taken back, and Talia is given back Batman, and eventually Batman will make his way back to Gotham. Meanwhile, that is interspersed with the story of Renee Montoya, the Question, working alongside Batgirl as they're trying to get to she's trying to solve the mystery of the murder of Officer Henry Fielding, who was killed by his partner, but who was working for Lady Orgum, or the Orgum Queen. And again, some cool moments, but we kind of already know this, and I don't really think it's necessary. Why couldn't we just have Batman? Couldn't we just avoid all this? I mean, Batman's healed from psychological effects before, and Batgirl and Orgum. Like, does it really matter that we have an immediate the solving of the crime of Henry Fielding? How much of that is that really important? To me, the more interesting aspects of this were the backup, which I think gives us more information on Dr. Hurt. And the suggestion, which is very interesting, that Dr. Hurt at the end of the backup story, his brain patterns are essentially, they overcome. It's revealed that this character named Selma, this black character, that her brain patterns are overridden by the brain patterns of Dr. Hurt. And Dr. Hurt was this character who sort of sets people up to fail. He props you up, puts you on a pedestal, makes you feel good about yourself and some aspect of your life, and then absolutely destroys your life, as was shown in the backup last issue. And it looks like Dr. Hurt, I'm curious now, is this Dr. Hurt actually this Selma character? Is this how Dr. Hurt is Dr. Hurt a character that his brain patterns go from character to character, and maybe we'll never know who Dr. Hurt is? Is this now the central conceit or power of the character? Or is this misdirection? I'm not really sure. It's Dan Waters. I like Dan Waters, but I will also admit that at times Dan Waters does script some tales that it takes a while for them to sort of ferment and for me to appreciate. So not bad. I'm not lost. I know what's going on. I just feel that we're sort of dragging to get to an endpoint that we all know is inevitably going to come. So, but it's all right.
Yeah, definitely feels like we get momentum and then we slow down and tread water for a little while. So anyway, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail this week. As far as collections go, we've got a Justice Society of America Volume 1, the new Golden Age hardcover. It collects the current Justice Society of America run from Jeff Johns, which is going to be his last work at DC for the foreseeable future, as well as the new Golden Age one-shot. So we've really been enjoying that series. Unfortunately, it's been plagued by delay after delay after delay. So hopefully it comes to a satisfying conclusion before Johns moves on. There's also a Night Terrors Nocturnal Creatures hardcover. So this collects the Night Terrors 2-issue series of Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Joker, Punchline, and Zatanna. We weren't big fans of Night Terrors. I think the Zatanna, far and away, by Dennis Culver, is the best story in that bunch, but not something that we necessarily would recommend. There's also an Absolute Dark Knight hardcover, which, if you haven't ever read The Dark Knight, this actually collects that Dark Knight Returns seminal work from Frank Miller, as well as Dark Knight Strikes Again, as well as a slipcase and new, behind the scenes sketches and all that sort of stuff. So if that's your jam, you can look into picking that up. I mean, Absolute editions are oversized with all kinds of art. They're usually about $100, $150. And that does it. Oh no, there's also one other. There's a 0 Hour Crisis in Time 25th anniversary omnibus hardcover, which I can't believe it's been 25 years since 0 Hour Crisis in Time. If you're not familiar, Dan Jurgens, Jerry Ordway, along with quite a few other artists, and this omnibus collects all the tie-ins as well. So after Crisis on Infinite Earths, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't just reboot everything like they did with the New 52, which is what they should have done, what Marv Wolfman wanted to do. And they started building up some continuity issues after supposedly they're going to clean up all the continuity issues as Crisis on Infinite Earths. So they came out with another event a few years after. I think it was about 5 years after, right around, it's 25 years, right? So 1999, or 1989 rather, 4 years after Crisis. 3 years after Crisis ended, 4 years after Crisis started. They came out with the 0 year, and they again tried to clean stuff up. So it's very classic. It's very late 80s, very of its time. Fun fact: 0 Hour Crisis in Time came out when I actually owned a comic book. That was the time that I actually owned a comic book shop. It was it was good. It was good times back then. So
Right on.
anyway, that 1999. Did I say? It says it's the 20th anniversary. I don't think that's right. The 25th anniversary of 0 Hour. It says it's the 25th anniversary omnibus, but yeah, I owned my comic shop in '94. That's not the 20th anniversary. The dates are not lining up on that correctly. I'm just gonna Google it real quick. Yeah, so 0 Hour came out in '94. Yeah, so that's it should be the 30th anniversary, not the 25th anniversary. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, that's the time when I own my comic shop, 93, 94. Yeah, so anyway, that's the collections that are out there this week, if you are so inclined, everybody. So, all right, Rocky, book of the week. Is it easy? Is it hard?
It was very easy for me, and that was the Penguin, number 7. The Penguin is number 7. It's a frankly, it's a game changer. It actually has lasting impact, and it completely changes my perspective on the Penguin moving forward, on his origin. It gives him more. It renders him as being far more intelligent and deceptive than he ever has been in the past, or to the extent he has been written very intelligently in the past. He's a genius mobster. But this simply shows that he's always been, because he had to be in order to overcome the very obstacles and his deficiencies of character and of size and of intimidation. And it's just, Tom King just scripts a fantastic comic, and the art. I know while you had some issues with the portrayal of Penguin, I think he looks more terrifying and yet horrific and yet powerful all at the same time. And I think it's another example of Tom King collaborating with just a good set of artists that give justice to the story he's trying to tell. So, what about yourself?
Yeah, I thought I was going to go with the Penguin as well, partly because you picked it, and I want to pick something different, but also because even though, we talk about singular story, I'd probably have to go with the Penguin too. I didn't like every story in Batman Brave and the Bold, but I loved the Lois Lane story. I thought the cheeseburger story was a lot of fun. And I thought it was nice seeing the classic Batman in the blue and gray costume with the Maps Maguchi story. So, the nameless story, like I said, forgettable. Artemis story, problematic probably as well. But man, on the strength of the fun of the cheeseburger story, the strength of the Lois story, and just the fun of the Carl Kerschel doing classic Batman, I'll pick Batman Brave and the Bold. So I mentioned before Absolute Power. So Comics Pro was last week on Wednesday. DC did their big promotion. There's an article, if you follow on social media, you probably saw it already, article on the Comic Source about this. So Absolute Power is the big event coming up later this year. Amanda Waller teaming up with Brainiac takes the power of not just the heroes, like she told all the villains, hey, go kill all the heroes. She's double-crossing those villains as well. No surprise, right? She takes all the power of all the super humans, super meta-humans in the DC universe, and, fallout ensues. So we'll see how that all plays out. It's called Absolute Power. There's a lot of tie-ins. It's being written by Mark Waid, art by Dan Mora and Mikhail Yanin. It kicks off with New Comic Book Day. There's also a bunch of tie-in series, and almost all the tie-in series that I've seen so far, up to like 25 issues-ish, are all written by Mark Waid. So this is a Mark Waid run joint. So in a way, I'm worried that Waid's biting off more than he can chew. It does make sense that why he left Shazam to focus on this. But at the same time, I like that it's going to be one cohesive voice. And, Mark Waid's a good voice to have because he's been doing some fantastic work in DC lately. And like I said, if this shows the world that Amanda Waller is an out and out villain and takes her off the playing field for quite a while, then I'll be happy about that. So yeah, we've got the Absolute Power series, New Comic Book Day, May, Absolute Power Ground Zero in June, Absolute Power 1 through 4 starts in July. There's a Superman Absolute Power title, a Batman Absolute Power, a Wonder Woman Absolute Power. There's a 7-issue Absolute Power Task Force 7 series. There's a 3-issue Absolute Power Origin series. So again, it's a lot for Mark Waid. I hope they have A-list artists lined up. I hope they're working on it currently, and I hope all this stuff comes out on time. In addition to that, they announced some of the titles for the return of the Elseworlds imprint that's coming, and they also announced a new line of collected editions that are going to be curated for some various characters. So think of the Epic line over at Marvel. This is going to be like the DC equivalent of that, if you will. And they're going to have, like, hey, you pick up the Flash series or the Flash collection, and it's going to have Barry Allen Flash, Wally West Flash, all different characters. But the stories, like if I want to know essentially who the Flash is, or who Superman is, or who Wonder Woman is at their core, then that's what I would pick up and read. Or somebody that wants to maybe not familiar with comics, but they want to have like the essential Catwoman stories. That's the line that you're going to be able to pick up. It's going to be called DC's Finest Graphic Collections is what they're calling it. So that's coming as well. And then maybe the one that sort of impacts our lives the most and actually got the biggest round of applause from retailers. They haven't announced the date yet, but DC has announced that they are going back to releasing their books on Wednesdays, not on Tuesdays or like everybody else, but on Wednesdays. And so that means, like we're doing today, where we're recording on Tuesday, we'll go back to releasing it on Wednesday because the embargo date is going to change. We won't be able to put this out on Tuesday. We'll have to wait until Wednesday when it comes out. So I know there was a lot of retailers that didn't release their books until Wednesday anyway, but there's some that did. There's some that even released them earlier because when it switched over to Lunar, they were shipping them so they'd have them in time for Tuesday. Because a lot of comic shops, they close on Mondays rather than the weekend, rather than being closed on Sunday. If they're closed any day, it's usually Monday. And then you're not there on Monday to receive a shipment to have them out on Tuesday. So they'd ship them the week before, and people were selling them over the weekend. But yeah, sometime in April is all we know that the DC release date is going to go back to Wednesdays. So that's all the big news out of Comics Pro from DC. A lot of doings and happenings, and obviously we'll be covering it all here. And then kind of on a more somber note, a very sad note, especially personally for me, Ramona Fradon, the legendary illustrator, female creator, passed away, was announced by her agent, Catskill Comics, over the weekend. I mean, 94 years old, you can say she definitely led a full life. Legendary seminal work on Aquaman, really bringing that character into back to prominence in the Golden Age and then into the Silver Age, and co-created Metamorpho. She drew the first comic that I ever bought. It was a Super Friends comic. I loved the Super Friends cartoon when I was 4 years old, and when I went to the store and spinner rack there, it was what I knew, and I picked it up, and I got a chance to meet her at San Diego Comic-Con in 2015. I was in tears getting a chance to meet her, thinking about, just how my life has been impacted from reading and falling in love with art.
Do you remember the comic? Do you remember the comic that you first read?
Yeah, Super Friends. I'm trying to remember what issue. Let me get Super Friends in front of me. I'll be able to tell you what issue. But she was so gracious, like, that I was there with tears in my eyes. And I've read several interviews that she's given over the years, and reread them quite a few times over the last few days, just to kind of revisit. And she talked about, not really understanding why people, why it resonated with people the way that it did, but was just happy that it did. She's a legend. She'll definitely be missed. I'm trying to find it here. Number 40. Number 40. Number 40, Wonder Woman on the cover. Yeah,
Nice.
from January 1st, 1981 is the cover date. So, yeah. Uh, and again, there's been a lot of tributes on Instagram and Twitter and what have you, because she was just a legend. So yeah, I got a chance to meet her. Um, the original copy that I had was lost to the ravages of time. I think my mom probably threw it away. But of course, I bought a replacement copy years and years ago, and she signed it for me. And I also got her to do a commission. She did a Plastic Man commission for me. I told her, draw whoever you want. She's a big fan of drawing Plastic Man and Metamorpho because she loved how malleable they were. She could do pretty much anything. So he's sitting on a chair and his neck is a big corkscrew. And I bought some other original art that she had. And so, yeah, she was just such a lovely person. And we chatted for probably a good 30, 45 minutes. I was asking her about her career, and
Nice.
you think back to being, back in the 50s and a female, one of the very few. And, I asked her, what, did the guys make fun of you, whatever? She's like, no, not at all. Like, I just didn't experience that, which is so strange. Cause nowadays you hear the opposite. But yeah, it's just, by all accounts, I never heard anybody say a bad word about her, and her art is just iconic. So, I hope she's, resting in peace. And I felt like I lost one of my grandmothers when I found out she was gone, but just grateful to have had a chance to meet her. And like I said, she was so generous. And that was the first time I met her. I saw her at a couple times after that and said hi at some subsequent shows. But yeah, a big loss. She was a pioneer. And yeah, our condolences to her friends and family. She'll definitely be missed.
Yeah, for sure. And she's almost as old as Wonder Woman, or I think actually is older, isn't she? She died at the.
94? I
Yeah,
think one,
I mean Wonder
yeah,
Woman was 1942, wasn't it? So
yeah. So,
yeah, crazy. Wow, an amazing. Yeah, it's another legend has left us, and she's someone that I'm glad that you had that you said all that, because she's a prime example of an artist that I've taken for granted, because I mean, my God, I have a whole Super Friends collection too, and I was too young to appreciate the skill of the creators that did it. It's only now, as I'm older, as an aging older collector, who now I have a greater appreciation for the people that gifted us with their talents, and it's really sad to see her pass.
yeah, and she just did some covers for DC within the last couple of years. I'm really glad that she got to do that. She did an Action Comics one that's a bullpen scene of the Daily Planet, and then she
Yeah.
had a Metamorpho cover for Danger Street, for Tom King's
Oh,
Danger
that's
Street
right.
that was done recently. So yeah, fantastic to see her working right up to the end. Speaking of Tom King, I hinted at it earlier. Everybody, you're going to have Tom King, Daniel Sampere on the Comic Source podcast coming up later this week. So look for that. Probably going to drop on Friday, is my guess. So really looking forward to chatting with them about Wonder Woman. I just recently had the opportunity to talk with Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins about their upcoming Black Label book, The Batman First Night. That comes out March 5th. Tell your retailers you want it now. It is fantastic. We'll be talking about it next week. That's when it comes out, March 5th. So that's available audio only. It's also available on the Comic Source YouTube channel with some graphics, some interior pages and covers. That was a fantastic chat. They both gave a lot of insight into the making and choices they made. They talked about the coloring, how they were going to have Mike Spicer, the longtime colorist for Mike Perkins, color it one way to begin with. And then they switched like 10 pages in, which is get a little behind the scenes insight into that switch and why they made that change and what have you. So yeah, just a fantastic conversation with two legendary creators. I've never met Mike Perkins in person. I've never had a chance to chat with him before. He was just a lot of fun to talk to. Amazing,
Right on.
very talented artist. And yeah, Dan, I've talked to a ton of times, see him at shows and know relatively well. So it was great to see him as well. So Daily Spawn continues on the Comic Source YouTube channel as well. Rocky mentioned my Nicole Maines interview. So a lot of good content out there, everybody. Don't forget to head over to the Comic Source channel and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you're watching the Comic Boom YouTube channel. So be sure you subscribe, leave some comments below. Let us know what you thought of this week's books. Ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out on Rocky's channel. If you're listening to the audio only and you want to find that channel on YouTube, just go to YouTube, Comic Space Boom, ! And you'll find it. As far as our back catalog for the Comic Source with literally thousands and thousands of episodes, they're all there for your listening pleasure. Just go to wherever you get your podcast app or platform or what have you. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Again, tons of content, daily spawns coming out every day. And we're doing it because we love comics, and a lot of great things coming up later this year. So be sure you join us and follow us on social media so you know when things are about to drop. Rocky, anything else to add? Got anything coming up? You want to tease anybody?
Well, I'm behind in some of my reviews, but I'm not going to make any promises at this point. I have a busy week at work, but we shall see.
Yeah, we did. Rocky and I were lucky enough to find time to get together to review Ultimate Spider-Man #1, and Ultimate Spider-Man #2 came out last week, and we are still planning on getting a review out for that as well, because that's been it's been a breath of fresh air to read something from Marvel that really doesn't feel like you got to read tons of other stuff to get into and understand. So
for sure,
no promises, but we'll try to get that out for you at some point. So. That's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining as always. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.